In this episode of the Whiskey Tornado, we review our Bourbon of the Year for 2020. What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Whiskey Tornado. I'm your host, Lance. Today we are revealing our Bourbon of the Year for 2020. And let me take a minute just to kind of tell you guys the criteria for our Bourbon of the Year. So a couple of things I did different than other channels to determine my Whiskey of the Year. This is not necessarily my Whiskey of the Year. I crowdsourced this from our Patreon members. So what I did is I took my top ranked bourbons throughout all of 2020 and I sent samples to my top Patreon members, blind samples, and we did a live tasting via a Zoom call. It took about 2 hours. We nosed them, tasted them, visited, had a great time. At the end, everyone sent me their ranking from 1 to 5, and we determined our Bourbon of the Year for 2020. The only other criteria for my Bourbon of the Year, same as last year, is I had to have found it on the shelf and I had to have been able to buy it for MSRP. I don't see the point of ranking bourbons for Bourbon of the Year if you can't find them or if they're kept in back for VIP members. My Bourbon of the Year has to be accessible by anybody, so I have to be able to find it on the shelf for MSRP for it to go into my rankings at the end of each year. Before I reveal our order, let me quickly thank our Patreon members. We have Ryan, Ed, Aaron, Brian, and Ben. Thank you guys so much for doing this with me. It was a blast to be able to send you my favorite whiskeys of 2020 and then sit down on a Zoom call and nose and taste these. And I gotta say, you guys all have incredible palates. It was so fun to taste this with you, pick out notes, and you guys actually came up with a lot of notes that I didn't come up with in my initial tasting of these and my initial reviews. So without further ado, let's get into this. At number 5, we have Sam Houston 14 year. This is the Illinois batch. It was fantastic. For a lower proof, it's a 98 proof. It had a ton of flavor packed in. And while it's fantastic bourbon, in this list of hitters, amongst most of my Patreon members, this one did come in last or close to last. It really didn't hold up quite as good as the other ones. All right, in the number 4 spot is Remus 4. This is a MGP juice bottled by MGP, so it's coming out of Indiana. This is one of the best values in bourbon, I believe. It's $80. It's a 12-year-old blend. The blend is on the back. If you ever see any of these Remus bottles, I highly recommend them. This ranked pretty high among a lot of our Patreon members. All right, in the number 3 spot, we have Wild Turkey 17-year bottled and bond. This is one I thought would probably come in last because it's got such strong char notes to it. So strong that it almost crosses into medicinal, and it can turn a lot of people off. Now, some of our Patreon members voted this really high and some really low, and that's why it fell right in the middle. If you love Scotch, then this is a bourbon for you. It's more challenging. It is so complex and rich and full of flavor, and it just evolves. I mean, this is one you could sit down with 2 ounces of for an hour and just really explore it. But it does veer off your traditional bourbon notes a little bit because of that extra char, and it almost becomes like a medicinal cherry note. To me, I love it. Some of our Patreon members loved it. Some of them absolutely hated it. So that's why it's right in the middle. All right, in the number 2 spot, and this was so close. These last two were neck and neck. In the number 2 spot, we have Elijah Craig Barrel Proof A120. Now, I picked the A120 batch because in all the blinds, I did lots of blinds with this year, it beat B520 and C920 for my palate. It's just more complex. There's more fruit notes in there than the other two. And to me, it just beats it. A lot of people are saying C920 is the best of the year. Actually, a lot of people are saying B522. For me, A120 was it. It is a little hot, but it is such a fantastic bourbon for $60. You just really cannot beat it for the price. This is the best value in the whole bunch. If you can find it for $60, but I'd pay up to $80, probably even $90 for this bottle. It is that good. And due to the heat, I was kind of surprised it ranked as well as it did, but it was our number 2 spot among our Patreon members in this lineup. All right, and coming in at the number 1 spot, and I kind of predicted this, is Bardstown Discovery 3 series, is our 2020 Bourbon of the Year for Whiskey Tornado, crowdsourced by our Patreon members. Now, this is an expensive bottle. This comes in at about $125. It is a blend of 45% 13-year Indiana, so it's 13-year MGP juice, 45%, 32% of a 13-year Kentucky, and 23% of a 10-year Kentucky. It is such a gorgeous blend. It is super rich. The mouthfeel on it's incredible. It's super velvety and coating. And I predicted that it would win, and it did. I think 3 of the 6 of us that reviewed it placed Bardstown Discovery 3 as their number 1, and that was in a blind taste test. So there you have it, guys. We've got Bardstown Discovery 3 in the first spot, Elijah Craig A120 in the second. You could probably pick any of those Elijah Craig barrel proofs from this year. They're all phenomenal. Wild Turkey 17-year bottled in bond, Remus 4, and Sam Houston 14 comes in last place, but there are no losers in this bunch. All fantastic bourbons. If you find any of them, I would get them. This one comes in at 120. Remus comes in at 80. Wild Turkey bottled in bond comes in at 175-ish. 65 for the Elijah Craig, and 125 for the Bardstown Discovery 3. All fantastic bourbons, but you got to give the value to Elijah Craig, but the taste you got to give to Discovery 3 from Bardstown. Just a phenomenal blend. All right, guys, so that does it. I want to give a special thanks to my Patreon members for doing this tasting with me blind. It was so much fun. If you'd like to be a Patreon member, the link is in the description below. You can join our crew for as little as $2 a month. Do fun stuff like bourbon tastings. Also, an Advent calendar that I sent out to my Patreon members. So look forward to Advent videos starting on December 1st. There will be one a day from December 1st to December 24th. Thank you guys so much for the support, and we'll see you on the next video. Cheers.